champion now. Jaron Ennis elevated from interim champion to full champion by the IBF after Terence Crawford has to go down and fight Errol Spence, of course. Errol Spence exercised that rematch clause after Crawford absolutely dominated him in July, and Crawford's waiting to see when that fight happens. It's supposed to happen in February. Nothing's set yet. But the IBF, they do usually follow their own rules, unlike the other ones, even if their rules. An email champion now. Jaron Ennis elevated from interim champion to full champion by the IBF after Terence Crawford has to go down and fight Errol Spence, of course. Errol Spence exercised that rematch clause after Crawford absolutely dominated him in July, and Crawford's waiting to see when that fight happens. It's supposed to happen in February. Nothing's set yet. But the IBF, they do usually follow their own rules, unlike the other ones, even if their rules.
What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, this narrative is disrespectful to undefeated, now IBF welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, the phenom as I refer to him as, Jaron Boots Ennis. Jaron Boots Ennis is 31 wins, no losses, no draw. 28 wins by way of knockout, 26 years of age, 5'10" with a 74-inch arm reach. In the last 24 hours, Jaron Boots Ennis has been elevated to the IBF official welterweight world champion, is now undefeated 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, and now former undisputed welterweight world champion, superstar boxer who is widely acknowledged and recognized as the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in Terence Crawford, has been relieved as the IBF welterweight world champion. So he's no longer the undisputed champion. This on the heels of Terence Crawford inherited Jaron Boots Ennis as his mandatory challenger. Terence Crawford, along with now former unified 3-belt WBA, WBC, IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer, Errol the True Spence Jr., who at the time, they both came together and gave the world the fight that the world wanted to see, which was Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence. Both guys was top 5 pound-for-pound best fighters. They both was undefeated, and it was for welterweight supremacy, undisputed at welterweight. There never been a welterweight 4 major sanction belt undisputed champion in the history of sport of boxing. Terence Crawford was going for history in his own right because he was already undisputed and became the first undisputed junior welterweight. Now he was attempting to be the first male to become undisputed in 2 separate weight classes, because Carissa Shields has done it in female boxing and women boxing. So this was a fight that was seen to be the biggest fight in the last decade. On paper, a 50-50 fight, if there ever were one. The whole boxing world was clamoring for this fight. They gave it to us. July 29th, Las Vegas, Nevada, T-Mobile Arena. Now, Terence Crawford dominated the fight. He dropped Errol Spence in the 2nd round, twice in the 7th, and stopped him in the 9th. It wasn't as competitive as many people as anticipated. And so, leading up into that, more importantly, to get to the point of actually seeing the fight, never mind the outcome, but to just get to the point of actually seeing the fight, they had to negotiate. And because they negotiated, in negotiations, both was undefeated, both was world champions, both was top 5 pound for pound. They negotiated a rematch clause. Now, going into that fight, Jaron Boots Ennis was Errol Spence's IBF mandatory challenger. But unifications and undisputed trumps mandatories. So they allowed Errol Spence to go into this fight with Terence Crawford. Now, in negotiations, they negotiated the winner gets a bigger share of the pie automatically in the rematch and gets to choose what weight class they have the rematch in. The loser gets to activate a rematch clause immediately But they have 30 working business days to make up their mind if they're going to do so or not. And so in this case, Errol Spence lost. He represented the IBF, International Boxing Federation sanction body, since he won it May of 2017, almost 7 years he held that title. We are going into 2024. So 6.5 years he held that title, represented it in high regards, and unified the belts. So they respected Errol Spence and allowed him to go in the biggest, most marquee fight, most important fight of his career with Terence Crawford. Errol Spence lost. He activated the rematch clause. The IBF is saying they don't care about the rematch clause. They don't care about rematches. They want to stick to their rule book. And now Jaron Boots Ennis is supposed to get his opportunity, and clearly he can't, because Terence Crawford is contractually obligated and bound to giving Errol Spence a rematch, or Errol Spence can take him to court and sue Terence Crawford. So Terence Crawford cannot sidestep Errol Spence and say, I'm fighting Jaron Boots Ennis. Because if that's the case, then Terence Crawford will have to do that with every mandatory for every sanction body, and he'll never get to Errol Spence. Because let's say he fights and beats Jaron Boots Ennis, well, then Amanda Stanionis is next in line with the WBA mandatory, and he's already the WBA regular champion. So now he's going to be knocking on the door saying, okay, you gave Boots his opportunity for the IBF. Now I need my opportunity for the WBA. Then guess what? The WBC mandatory challenger is going to be knocking at the door, which is Keith Thurman, and he's going to be saying, I need my opportunity. And then it'll never end, and Errol Spence will never get his rematch. So the IBF decided to make a move, seeing as though Terence Crawford and Errol Spence is seemingly going to take place now at 154 junior middleweight. So they decided to relieve him of his IBF status and elevate Jaron Boots Ennis. And ESPN is reporting, although this was a joke and I understand what they was getting at, you got to clarify it in detail, because now people are going to run with the narrative that Jaron Boots Ennis is an email champion. No, Jaron Boots Ennis, his father, trainer, and manager, Bozy Ennis, did the right thing. They had to enforce this stance, because if they didn't, they would never be a champion. And the reality is Terence Crawford just simply can't fight Jaron Boots Ennis because he's contractually, legally bound to fighting Errol Spence in a rematch. This is the repercussions of wanting the big fight that we wanted between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. They gave us the fight, but in negotiations, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford negotiated that the loser gets the opportunity to immediately get an opportunity to regain their titles. That's the repercussions of it. And the fact remains, the fact of the matter is, Jaron Boots Ennis don't care about no rematch clause. He care about his career and getting his opportunity. So he was supposed to enforce the rule book and demand that he gets the belt or Terence Crawford be stripped. He gets his opportunity or Terence Crawford be stripped. So they decided to relieve Terence Crawford of his duties. But to call Jaron Boots Ennis the email champion is irresponsible on the part of the boxing world, boxing pundits, and boxing media. He's not an email champion. This all came about because the same thing happened, similar thing happened when Vasyl Lomachenko decided to sidestep now undisputed lightweight champion Devin Haney, who ended up beating him anyway this past May. But nonetheless, before that, Lomachenko didn't want to honor his mandatory in Devin Haney. He decided to be franchised, and they elevated Devin Haney to WBC super champion. Lomachenko was essentially champion in recess, but recognized as the franchise champion as a piece on the chessboard that he can move around freely without having to fight his mandatories. And then everybody started calling Devin Haney an email champion. But if you're going to call one an email champion, you have to call them all an email champion. So now Jamal Charlo received his title in the same manner that Devin Haney received it, but nobody calls Jamal Charlo an email champion. Because Canelo Alvarez was elevated, then left the division. He never beat Canelo Alvarez. he was appointed the WBC title because Canelo Alvarez was going to be franchised and allowed to not have to fight as mandatory and move freely. And so Jamal Charlo was elevated when he fought Brandon Adams. Right before he fought Brandon Adams, 2 days before he fought Brandon Adams, they elevated Jamal Charlo as the WBC champion in middleweight. And he has not defended his title in 2 years. And nobody calls Jamal Charlo an email champion. This is irresponsible on the part of ESPN to report this in this manner. Listen.
An email champion now. Jaron is elevated from interim champion to full champion by the IBF. After Terence Crawford has to go down and fight Errol Spence, of course. Errol Spence exercised that rematch clause after Crawford absolutely dominated him in July. And Crawford's waiting to see when that fight happens. It's supposed to happen in February. Nothing set yet. But the IBF, they do usually follow their own rules, unlike the other ones, even if their rules.
So there you have it. When you're going to say things like this, you got to completely clarify and give clarification and breakdown as to why you said what you said, period. Because now people are going to take this narrative and run with it that Jaron Boots Ennis is an email champion, and or they're going to say Terence Crawford ducked him and got stripped of the belt. It's irresponsible. You got to break the whole situation down in its totality, to the T. And that's all I got for y'all, man. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. So all I got for y'all. I'm gone. Peace.